Alright everyone, welcome back to Heather's Mixed Media Studio. As you can see by the pile on my desk, we have things to look at. I spent money on Amazon again. I hate giving money to, who is that, Jeff Bezos? But at the same time, it is often the easiest way to get the items that you need for your craft studio. And one of the first ones that I bought this time around is the first one I want to show you because I want to install it to see if it makes a difference. Now, probably in the camera, you're seeing the ring light right now, if I had to guess, reflecting off of the stencils or off of the plastic. I know that the ring lights are really bad at reflecting off of surfaces. So from my time in hanging out with people who are really into photography and camera work, I thought, man, what I really need is a diffuser for my ring light. So I figured if I've thought about this, then surely someone smarter than me has thought about this. And there simply must be a diffuser available that I could get for my ring light. And so that's what these are. They come as a 2-pack. The set that I bought did anyway. And I am going to put one on the ring light and see if that makes the that ring light halo that you get on everything shiny on your desk to go away and not be like that. And in theory, I can put this on while we're recording. Maybe. We'll see. No guarantees of that. Alright. Actually, I'm going to hit pause just in case, because I think I might have to take the phone down to put it on. But this is what it looks like. It's like a little white skirt. And so you put this over the light, and it should diffuse the light so we're not getting that big shadow. And then it's got Velcro bits that help it stay on, and I'm pretty sure this is the part that goes over where the phone is right now, so I'm going to have to move the phone to put that part on. So we'll be back in just a minute, and we'll see if it works. Well, sadly, I'm not going to call that a raging success. I still clearly have rings. I'm going to have to play with mine. I also think mine's not mounting correctly because I think I have the wrong size for the ring light that I actually have. So I'm going to play around with it, see if I can make it better, see if I can get a metal. I'm going to play with it. That's what I'm saying. So at the moment, I would not call it a raging success. But I might be able to make it a success by futzing with it. And if I do that, I'll let you know how it goes. Anyway, let's get back to recording the rest of today's video. Oh my goodness. So what else came in that haul? I told you guys, or I think I told you guys, I have a plan to make a bunch of different train stencil things happen. A bunch of train artwork, I should say. And so this is a previous train stencil that I purchased. And I was comparing the other previous train stencil that I had purchased. Hello, early preview. Because this one looked enough like another one. Sorry, this is another one that I had previously purchased. And so when this one showed up in the mail, I was confused and concerned that I might have bought this one again. But they're not. You can see the engines have different artwork on them. This one has more of the trailing. This has a rocky scene behind it, where this one has trees behind it. So yeah, I did come up with yet another train stencil. I haven't really played with those much on camera. I really should. But that's where my new glue brush came from, was a previous stencil. This particular one, Finger Inspire, when they send theirs, and of course they're in these protective outer coating, they come with a paintbrush and this awesome background page. And my other one did as well. And I love the background that it sends it on. At one point, I'm going to have to try to recreate that background, because you could use this for all kinds of things. It just has a very, it's got that splatter effect. You could use this as an outer space kind of thing. I now have a second glue brush because those are awesome for that. And so I have backgrounds. So that's the one that just came today. This is the one that came previously. Pretty sure they're identical. But yeah, those are both by Finger Inspire. So I've kept those because that background paper might be useful at some point in the future, because it's pretty. This is one of the envelopes that came in. If you know about the rug project, I've got some fussy cutting there to do with some UPC codes. I'll take care of that. No, this is not a pet drinking fountain. I did order one of those back when Callie was still around, but I needed a box. Every spring and fall, and we tried one at Christmas, I host an ATC swap with, sorry, not show personal information. I host an ATC swap with local artist friends who are known to me before I got involved in YouTube. And so it's a bunch of, personal people that I know, that not that I have met through anything. And I use this box to remind me that we have a swap going on and that I need to keep all the bits together until swap day. And it keeps them from getting lost on my desk. So people sent me mail, and we're waiting for other participants to send their stuff in, and then we'll be able to get on with that. This project, so if you've seen these knit kits, they're like Knit Pick, I think is what it is. These are all over Facebook. Hopefully this has a booklet in it. I have a bunch of things I need to mend, particularly cotton shirts that got holes in them. And I'm just going to try this and see if I can mend them with little, tartan type patches and try to make my life a little better without having to completely replace a bunch of shirts that have holes in them. So I grabbed one of those. This is, yeah, I'm going to garbage that. I want to keep that. I bought a dessert product at Aldi, and it's a caramel mousse of some kind. And it turns out it comes in these glass containers. And so I washed those out really good. The caps are plastic, but the caps actually snap on really well. So I have kept hold of those. These might become brush washing stations. Not sure what I'm going to do with them yet, but I didn't want to recycle them because I think they'll be more useful in the craft room than they will be in my recycling can. So we'll put those over there for now. If you're familiar with PM Artist Studios and their stencils, they do their stencils on Yupo paper. I don't know anything about Yupo paper except that it's made of polypropylene. I've never used it. I don't know anything about it. But I intend in the next little while to go to my local makerspace. It's at our local library, and they have a silhouette machine which will allow me to make my own stencils. And so I want to try it on the Yupo paper. I also have some Mylar coming, and so I'm going to try printing them out on both Yupo and Mylar and see kind of what I like better, see how they turn out. This is 10 by 7. It was the closest to 8.5 by 11 that I could find. I think my Tyvek, or my Mylar, I said Mylar, I meant Tyvek. I don't know what I said, but I meant Tyvek. I think that's coming in 8.5 by 11, but it might be 9 by 12. So when that arrives and I make time to go to the library to do the studio work, I may be back in the future with stencils of my own design, and we'll see how that goes. But that's what this purchase is for. I may pull out a piece of that at some point just to play with it and see kind of what it is. I've never even heard of Yupo, and I don't own any of the stencils from the studio yet, because I didn't have any stencil I wanted to buy yet. I have one in mind that I want to make, but nowhere that I've looked contains the stencil that lives in my head. So, and I picked up some more gel press plates. These are the circle, the square, and the triangle that they do. I clearly spend too much time on Kerry Griffith's YouTube channel, because he uses these pretty frequently. And the types of things that he's doing with them I like. So I picked these up in the hopes that I can play with them going forward and do specific arty things that I can't presently do because I don't have these. So now I have these. So I think that was everything in the art haul that has arrived anyway. I think there are 2 more train stencils coming. The Tyvek is still on its way. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it. Now, I do have a whole bunch of fussy cutting that's going to be coming up, and I'm not going to do that on camera because that sounds really dull. So I do need to cut out the UPC codes that you just saw. I need to get all of these windows cut out so that I can use them in their project. So they'll go in the fussy cutting stack. I do want to figure out what to do with this piece of paper now that I clearly can't use it for the thing I was trying to use it for. Oh, and I still have to get to this month's Maker's Collage. I need to go print a bunch of stuff off at the library. So what that tells me is that next weekend I need to go to the library because I have stuff to do at the library. Oh, no, there's an idea. At some point I wanted to do a bunch of work with all of these scraps. These are all wet strength tissue paper scraps that I was going to weave and see what I thought of them as a woven thing. Now, I did do one of these on a smaller scale, just proof of concept. Let's see if it'll come off of here. Yeah, I turned it into one of my credit cards. And this is sort of how it came out, proof of concept. And this is all just woven wet strength tissue paper. And I just wanted to see what colors would come through, kind of what the effect would be. I think in this case, if I do it, I'll probably cut this up into ATCs. It's the most common thing that I'm going to do with a piece of paper this size. So perhaps that's what we'll work on today. And let's see what we can do. Today is going to be making art in the studio day. My partner's away. I can actually record. I can film. I can do whatever I want to do. It's still blank on the back, which is good. That tells me I can grid it out for an ATC cut and then do whatever I want on this side, because I consider this piece of paper to be completely useless at this point in time. But with the back being blank, I can still use it for ATCs and the like. So let's do that, where we measure it out for ATCs. We'll use a pencil this time because I'm angry at my pens because they were annoying me. So, all right. I can usually reliably get 9 ATCs out of this if I cut them at exactly 2.5 by 3.5. But I've also learned that I like to cut mine at slightly smaller than that. The problem with, and I don't know if I've shown you this on camera before, I must have, the sleeves that you get for sleeves. Sleeves are a plastic cover that you put over your ATCs to protect them. And when you use a sleeve, you'll discover that the sleeve is exactly 2.5 by 3.5. So if you make your card 2.5 by 3.5, it won't fit in the sleeve because the card has a thickness to it, and you can't put 2 things the exact same size, one inside the other. That's not how space and time works. So I usually cheat on my cards. They're usually ever so slightly under. And I have in the past done them under enough that I could get 12 ATCs. I don't know how I did it, and I don't know how much under. And you would think I would take notes on this and write it down, and then I would not forget, and I would have it for future knowledge. But no, that would require forethought and planning. So let's see how many 3.5 we can get. And it's not going to be 3.5. It's going to be 3 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 3 7/8. So I'm probably only going to get 2 3 7/8 out of here. Yeah, so that will only allow me to get 2 rows this way. but they would be 2 7/8 this way. So let's see how that does. And I may need to orient them completely the other way, but let's see what happens this way first. Oh, so close. This is actually 2 6/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can do almost 5, which would give me 10. I might be okay with that. I'm going to grid it out that way. That's what I'm doing this time. And I'm going to take notes so I can quit being dumb about it. 2, and it can't be 7/8. That's got to be wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7/16. That's what that is. All right, 2 7/16 by 3 7/16 ish. Okay. So first, let's get my 2 long marks in. And the long marks are going to be at 3 7/16. Sorry. 3 7/16. And 3 7/16. Which will probably leave me with like a bookmark or a bunch of squares or whatever on this side. Yeah, they're not quite going to be 2 inches, so I'm not going to use them for a different project I have. But it will be wide enough for a bookmark. So that's a thing. Let's do this again on the midline-ish. 3 7/16. That's what we're measuring today. And 3 7/16. And then finally at the top. Now I could turn my paper around, but if you do that, your measurements will be in the wrong space. So you always want to make sure to keep the paper oriented the same way when you're measuring stuff like this. 3 7/16. You could also figure out what 3 7/16 plus 3 7/16 is, so that you could do your second mark, but I am having I don't feel like doing that kind of math sort of day, and so I'm not doing that. Now that all 3 of your little hash marks are written down, you can go in, get your ruler set, and actually mark them off. And my hash marks never all quite line up, in part because this edge is always a bit wonky because I cut it out of the book. But this is... all right. So there we go. We now have the opposite side set up for 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 artist trading cards and 2 bookmarks. I'm going to find where the midpoint is here. And that's going to be at 6 inches. So that'll be here. This one I can flip over because in theory 6 inches and 6 inches is 6 inches, right? So we'll see. And then we'll do this part as a bookmark. Good enough. And now we can get to playing on this side. I do sort of want to put down a design on the back. I know that we've already got the black and the lines and the whatnot going on this side, but I kind of want to put a yellow on here because I think a yellow will be nice and bright and pop through. These are all blue, green, purple, and or black. There might even be some brown in here. But I think if I put a yellow down on here, then there will be a bright pop of color. And since we are coming up on spring, I think I would like that. So, to achieve that, how do I want to go about getting that? I have yellow paint markers I could do. I could do a yellow stencil. We could do that one floral stencil I said looked like it would fit on a gel plate. I mean, that's an idea. If I put this down on the plate, do I want the yellow to just be where these flowers are or where the holes are? Because that's a lot of yellow. What I might do is put this here and trace it in yellow pen. Maybe I'll do that. I'm not feeling like breaking out the whole gel plate cleanup, brayer off. I mean, that is a good time, but it's not the kind of time I want to have right this second. So right this second, we're going to pull out a Posca pen and do some tracing. Now, I don't know how much yellow I have left in my Posca pen, so we shall see how far we get. And I suppose we'll start in the middle. The other thing I could do is start in the middle with the yellow and then do some red and orange. Or I could if I owned an orange Posca pen, which I do not. But I do have orange Sharpie, the Sharpie Creative markers. So let's start with taping this down to the desk so it doesn't reposition itself a billion times while we're doing this, because you know it will. So let's get a little bit going on each of these corners just to keep the base paper from moving. I don't actually have any blue painter's tape, which would be a better thing for this job, but I'm out right now and I haven't seen fit to replace it, because I also know I have this roll of masking tape. Alright, so let's get that some version of centered. Yeah, that's as centered as I care about. And then, of course, I move it the minute I put my hand on it. Fun. That there. That there. Alright, so now we have the stencil in place. We have the paper in place. Let me find a creative art marker in orange. That's a fairly pastel thing there. The orange might be on my desk. One of those oranges. So that's probably back in here somewhere. Not in that pile. How about in this pile? This is why you shouldn't keep piles on your desk. Alright, I actually have two things that might count as orange. We'll try them both out on the paper here. One of these you're supposed to shake. I think it's this one. Yeah, because this doesn't shake. This one does. Alright, so then shake that one. Yeah, that's a really solid orange color. That'll work. And then this. Yeah, orange with a bit of red. Okay. Well, we'll hold that in reserve in case I need that. But we have yellow, we have orange, we have red. Alright, and everybody's all shook up. Alright, so let's get on with it. I think I am going to do this whole central motif in yellow. If I just wanted to outline at this level or color in, I think I'm going to color in here and start outlining after that. So yeah, we are going to outline at this level and higher. Because again, this is just going to be pops of color that you see in the background. It's not going to be much that's going to come through, which I suppose is one reason to color the whole thing in, but yeah, I don't know, we'll see. Maybe I'll color the whole thing in, but I don't think so, because that would take time that I don't want to spend on it. I also don't know what I'm going to do with this background. I'm going to cut it up into ATCs and bookmarks, but to what end, I don't know. And that's another thing that I'm having a struggle with is, what am I going to do with all this stuff I'm creating? Because the creation of it is fun, but I don't have places in my house to go with it, you know? There are only so many boxes I can cover, and I just don't tend to store things in boxes in that way. So yeah, I can start mailing them out to people and giving them away, but and I will do that, but then it's like, you know, how much money can I pour into art just to give it away, which, I mean, I'm willing to do to a certain extent, because right now we need that. We need people who will just create art and beauty and light and just give it away, because it's so dark and troubling out, you know, and I want to be part of the thing that keeps people going and not part of the thing that brings people down. So probably I will just give it away, but a certain part of me that's like, look, Chica, there's only so much of your income you can spend on art supplies. Yeah. And it would be great to turn this into like a profitable enterprise, but I'm so new to it that I think it would be immense hubris to think I could turn this into a profitable enterprise anytime in the near future. Profitable enterprise with your art is for people who actually know what they're doing. And that would be not me at this venture anyway. I don't think these orange blobs here are going to come out quite right, because the stencil is very thin here, and it's really easy to get these markers down under the stencil, which is kind of not the point. But again, this is all going to be in the background. You're not going to see it anyway, so maybe it doesn't matter if I'm good at this part or not. So yeah, I do want to put some random yellow out here just to have more pops of color in the background. Like I said, most of this isn't going to show through anyway, so, but I still want it to be there. I want it to have the opportunity to show through. And I'll throw some red over here and over here. And then I do want to get some of that orange on here as well. We'll do there, there. Yeah, these will just be, you know, those. And make it look like hair. All right, now there is stuff in the background, which is okay, except that it's a mess. You can't find the things I want. And some things need to be laid flat, and you know how it is. Anyway, let me try and at least pull all these scraps over into a pile. Possibly a couple piles sorted by color. But I cut these all up, I thought, on camera the other day. Maybe it wasn't on camera. But I took a bunch of my larger wet strength tissue paper offcuts, like that's one of the smaller ones, and cut a bunch of big strips off of them so that I could do what we're going to do today. And then I threw them into a pile on my desk, which just was not great. So yeah, let me do a little bit of sorting here into colors so that I have a better idea what I'm working with. Both short and long pieces. So I think I'm going to do the blues this way because I have fewer of them. And I will use my shorties to help make that length work. And I am going to use the clear end to be off the page, just to make my life easier. Let me get this out of the way. And there we go. So let's get started. I'm going to put this on the back here. And this will be our first piece, and it's going to start right here. And yes, I just glued it to the masking tape. I'll deal with that later. But I only want to glue it down about 1 paper width apart because I'm going to cross it with one of the green pieces. And the green pieces do go all the way across. So now we do the same thing, but with the green piece. And I do that by just painting straight on, the glue straight onto that, and then overlap it this way. All right, and so now we're well and truly started. But now I have to decide which piece I'm going to do next. So that one's on top, which means this needs to be under on the next layer. And so we'll get this one glued in place. And there it is for the next layer. And then something's going to go on top of it or under it. No, it has to go on top. Yeah, because this was the first layer, so this goes on top. See, this is what I mean by it's really easy to get yourself confused. And I want to turn it around because I want the patterns to be going in different directions. I also kind of want some variation, so I think I'm going to go with a black here instead. Yeah, we're going to go with black here instead. And then this will go here. And we'll put the black down. And so you can see where that red line that we drew is coming through. That's what I meant by I wanted something vivid in the background so that it would come through on the front side. Because this dries pretty much clear and you want to be able to see what's coming through. So this was under, which means this will be over. Why did I paint it down? I didn't. It accidentally painted it. Okay. So let's get this next piece on. Let's see. This will be over. Right. So this needs to go down on the thing. And it's going to be green all the way across because that's what I have the most of. But some of the greens have lots of color in them as well. So we'll do that and we'll turn it this way. Now, I've never done a weave at this size. So I might get lost in my own what goes on top of what now? I probably should find a way to demarcate that for myself. I'll think about it. All right, so there's that one. And see, they layer with each other, which I love. So this was on top, means it needs to be under here. So let's get some glue down here. Get this underneath what's going on next to it. And now we have reached approximately the halfway point. Well, not halfway, third of the way point. And a couple of mistakes have already happened, as they always do. My over-under got kind of out of sequence up here. I'm working with it the best way I can. I've managed to stay in sequence for most of the rest of it. And I just wanted to point out a couple of cool things that are going on. Over here, you can see these red and yellow lines coming through. Those absolutely are coming through from the background that we drew. And depending on the strips that go under, like this piece here and this piece here, You may end up seeing a lot of that. Anytime two pieces intersect where there's a lot of open white space, you are going to be able to see the background page. Now I've got other pieces like where these, the black and the green and part of this strip here are really opaque. And by opaque, I mean you can't see through them. And so on those areas, they do tend to cover up whatever's underneath it pretty solidly. So there are going to be areas where what's going on underneath is no relevance to what's going on top. So I'm grateful that I did that lower layer because it is showing through in certain areas. And that was the whole point of making sure there was something down there to show through that wasn't just the black smudges and these black lines. So I am going to potentially put the video back on pause again. Because it tends to be kind of tedious, and I tend to not talk to myself a lot, and then you would just be watching me do nothing with no sound. And maybe that's soothing for you, I don't know, but I'm not going to do that. But I do want to put another piece on here while I tell you about the list I did find. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I always try to go at them symmetrically. So I need the next black piece for here. And I think that's going to be probably this one. So this is the next one I'm going to be putting in. And it's going to go over top because the black ones always go over top. All right. Yeah, so it takes a minute to kind of figure out, am I over or under on this one? If you've ever done any weaving of paper before, you sort of know how that works. I do recommend, being really diligent about knowing which one's over and which one's under so that you can keep your weaves straight. I feel like I'm talking about hair there for a moment, but I'm not really. Anyway, I did find my list of my 100 tiny paintings that I want to work on. I had broken that list of 100 tiny paintings down into 10 train pieces so that I could carry on with my tiny train piece paintings. And the next was 10 animals, and those are specifically 10 animals I've seen while working. If you were here for the Welcome to the Studio tour, you'll know that I have a list. Nope, this should be underneath. Yep, that should be underneath. See, I already did it wrong. I have a list on my project board of all of the animals I've seen while driving. And I can add a couple more animals to it because I saw several more things. It's early spring now, and it's a good time to see animals out here in Greene County. And let's throw some more glue under there. It seems to be coming up. So yeah, all of the animals have to be animals I've seen while working. So it'll be like, what's on that list? Vultures, gophers, deer, coyote, squirrel, red-winged blackbird, fox, horse, cow, sheep, llama. I don't know if it's a llama or an alpaca. I'll have to double check. I think it's an alpaca. Emu, rabbit, hawk, duck, geese, robin, cardinal, finch, cats and dogs. I most recently saw, I don't know if my groundhogs are on there, but they should be, black vultures, which I had not seen before. We usually get turkey vultures out here. Did see a coyote again this year. We saw a herd of 7 deer run across the road the other night. That was really cool. So anyway, yeah, I keep track of all the animals I see, and it'll definitely be those, some subset of those animals will be the 10 that get painted. And then 10 flowers, and I specifically want to do flowers that I saw while I was up in Alaska. Because people down here, a lot of people do flowers, A lot of people like to paint flowers. But I want to paint flowers that you don't usually see in these parts. And that would be the flowers I saw while I was in Alaska. So I'll have to pull pictures of those up and get those painted. If your wet strength tissue paper should happen to tear like mine just did, because I wasn't being gentle enough with it, you can just put it back in place. Add a little glue to it. No one will ever know. So that's what I've been doing. And if they do know, I don't care. It's my art. I then want to do 10 trees that are, I want to start with pine because, again, from being up in Alaska, there's a lot of different kinds of pine trees. There's black pine and spruce pine and, well, pine. I forget which one's a subset of which. I want to say it's that all pine are evergreen, but not all evergreens are pine. And when I say pine, I mean evergreens, with specific focus on pine trees so that I can get all the different kinds of pine trees. And then I'll fluff the rest out with other trees that I think are pretty. I'm going to do 10 buildings, and those are going to be from the city I don't live in anymore, because there are several buildings out there, old and abandoned, and I just think they're lovely. Some of the architecture from that particular era, which is right around turn of the century America. A lot of them were built in like the 1890s, possibly earlier, 1820s, and like not any older than that, because again, I live in the United States and our buildings are just not old. But the ones that have been allowed to remain, which is a whole other thing, and which are actually old, I love the architecture of them, and so I want to paint some of those just so I have a record of these buildings in the event they get torn down by the inevitable developer who doesn't see any value in them, any worth in their oldness. So I've got a couple of those in mind that I want to paint. Somewhere I have photographs of some of them. If I can find them real quick, I'll show them to you, so that you can see kind of the architecture that I'm talking about. I also want to paint 10 places that I want to visit. There's a ton of traveling that I would like to do, and I'm not always in a financial state to do that traveling. But so I want to paint those places kind of like in a vision board sort of way, because if I commit it to paint, then surely it will come true and I will get to go there and see those things. That's what I'm telling myself anyway. And let's see. 10 planets or nebulae. I was also running out of ideas. But I think that trying to paint planets or paint nebulae in watercolor would be an interesting exercise in getting better at watercolor and a particular aspect of watercolor that I'm not great at right at the moment. I'm going to flip this one and it'll go this way. And this one goes underneath, I think. No, because this one's on top. It's got to be on top here, so it's got to be underneath there. Yes, this one goes underneath. This is what I mean by figuring out which direction you're going. So yeah, I've got a couple of places in mind that I'm going to paint. You know, here's a place I'd like to go. And we'll do a painting of that. And then planets and nebulae, that's where we were at. And then again, I was running out of ideas. 10 illuminated words or letters. I've never illuminated anything, which is drawing pretty pictures around the capital letter. There's more to it than that, but that's the version most people would have seen or understood. I don't actually want to do that, but I couldn't come up with anything else to paint. So if a category gets scratched and replaced with something else, that's the one that's going to get scratched and replaced with something else. So don't get your heart set on it, because it might not become that at all. I put the wrong color down again. This one first, then this one. All right. And then I broke the next couple categories down by half and half, because they're things I want to paint, but I don't want to paint 10 of them. So I'm going to do 5 faces, 5 eyes, 5 board games, and 5 pretty things from home. I had originally said 10, but it's going to be 5 of those. So there you go. That's the 10 things I'm going to do in tiny watercolor paintings. And if you give me just a second to paint this set down, or glue this set down, I will look for those building pictures real quick, because I might have a quick idea of where they are. Let's straighten that out a little bit. Come on. And then that glued up it. That should work. Okay. they might be right here. Maybe. Hold this down without causing a landslide. Let me take a look at these. Those are quote squares. That's the Fine Arts Center. Oh, no. It was actually not that stack. Huh. I wonder where it went. Maybe part of that landslide. Okay, we'll have to look at that landslide later. I have a lot of landslides around my office. Alright, I won't be able to show you the building pictures. That's okay. Alright, just a quick pop back in here. I have reached the point where I'm at the end of a lot of these little strips. These two ended a little earlier. So just to show you how we add in the extra strips to keep the strip going longer, this one I broke off here and then added this strip. Now it's an underneath, so it's going to have an over top of it. So the join's going to hide in that. This was the same way I looked at. This one was underneath. And you can see the jump here from this black to the ones that are black and brown. And so I'll end up doing something like that with each of these strips. So when I do my joins, I rip off the invisible part and then just butt that part up next to it. So it would look like that. But you absolutely could attach them to each other and let the see-through part do its see-through thing. It's not a look that I like, but it is absolutely something that you could do just to lengthen all of these strips so that we're going to get the whole page covered. I have plenty of green strips left. I only really need one more black down here. So I think I'm going to have plenty of strips left to actually finish out the piece. We are getting some lovely episodes where the color underneath is coming through, so there's a lot of that going on. So there's a lot of texture and a lot of color in here, and I'm really happy with how it's going. Now I think once I finish doing the weave, I'm also going to do some matte Mod Podge over the top, just to make sure that these stay nice and adhered to the cards. I recently did another card with lots of piecework on it, and I didn't Mod Podge those because they were going to somebody else, and I wasn't quite sure how they were going to use them. And so I wanted them to have the opportunity to finish it the way that they might need it. For all I know, they're going to do work on top of it, and a clear gesso might be a better choice than matte Mod Podge. And I think they have more tools at their disposal than I have at mine. So I'm kind of leaving it up to them and kind of crossing my fingers to make sure that all the pieces stay stuck where they're supposed to be while it's in transit, so that when that person receives their ATC backgrounds, that all the pieces are where they were when I put them in the envelope. But anyway, that's why I'm going to matte Mod Podge mine when I'm done, before I cut them into pieces. So I'm going to get back to doing the weaving, and by the time I bring you back in, the weaving will be completely done, and I will have done matte Mod Podge on the whole thing. So I'll see you in just a moment. All right, folks, there she is, all glued down, trimmed up, all that fun stuff. Bring it a little closer to the camera so you can see it in all its interest here. Still a little wet with the Mod Podge, but, you know, I'm going to let it dry overnight so it's fully dry before I cut it. But I definitely think the lines that are coming through in the clear spaces are fantastic. I know paper weaving is not necessarily for everybody, and doing it with a see-through medium where you can see all the different layers, also not for everybody. But I'm enjoying playing with it. These are going to be backgrounds for ATCs that I don't have a plan for yet, but eventually these will back something. So I want to thank you guys for coming along with me tonight while we made some interesting art. Once I get them all cut up, I'll put photos at the end of this video here so that you can see what each of the different ATC cards look like before they get embellished or get anything on them, just so you can see what this cuts down into. But like I said, I want to let it dry fully before I do that, and it's definitely not at that state yet. So yeah, thanks for coming along on tonight's adventure. And like I said, you'll get to see the photo here at the end of the thing. I hope you all are having a great weekend, and that you've gotten to do some art of your own. And I'll look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Bye-bye.